Yeah. Good morning, everyone. In the last session, we discussed about what is web client and why we need to go for web client and how to develop the consumer application by using web client, how to send a synchronous request by using web client, and how to send asynchronous request also by using web client. Are you guys able to practice the example using web client? Guys, are you able to practice the example by using web client? Whatever we discussed by using web client, are you able to do the practice of that?
Yes, sir.
Is it working as expected?
Yes.
Right? So web client example I have given. Yesterday we are able to access third-party API by using web client. So we have seen all the three ways to develop our consumer application. So by using REST template, we are able to develop the consumer, and by using web client also, we are able to develop the consumer, and we are able to develop the consumer by using CN client also. Okay. REST template is a class that is used for sending HTTP request, whereas that REST template will support for only synchronous communication. Web client is an interface which is available in the reactive web. Okay, I have updated this web client concept also in our document. Web client is used to send the HTTP request, so it supports asynchronous communication. And by using this web client, we can send a GET request in the synchronous way by using mono.block method. Block method is used to stop the thread until we get the response from the provider. Then we can use that response and we can handle that response. Now, suppose if you want to take the raw response in the body to mono, we are using string.class. If you want to convert that raw response into Java object, then we are using body to mono quote.class. Quote is a Java class which is used to map that JSON response. Okay. Suppose if you want to send asynchronous request by using web client, then we are using subscribe method. That subscribe method is taking functional interface called consumer, which will take only input but no output. The subscribe method is taking the response, so it will make our thread as a asynchronous thread. After sending the request to the third party API, it will not wait for the response, guys. It will continue its execution. Whenever the response comes from the third party API or when the response comes from the provider, then handle response method will be executed. So in that handle response method, you can write any logic, whatever you want. Whether you want to store the data into Kafka or whether you want to store the data into Redis, whatever the operation that you want to perform, you can do it by using handle response method. Okay, sending post request by using web client. So sending post request by using web client. So by using web client, you can send get request, post request, put request, delete request also. So when you want to send the post request, then we will use web client dot post method. In the post request, we can send the body. So dot body method available. Passenger object I am sending in the body, and the ticket object I am getting as a response. Okay. So this is basically accessing our IRCTC API, sending passenger data in the request body to book the ticket. Once the ticket booking is completed, we are going to get the ticket data back as a response. So like this, we can use the web client in order to send the get request and post request. So are you able to implement that make my trip by using web client now? So this is post request, how to send by using web client, and this is a get request example, how to send a get request by using web client example. Are you guys able to develop that make my trip application? And the beautiful material also I am providing every day. Whatever the notes that I am writing for in the class, that notes I am converting into the PDF document, and every day I'm updating this PDF document into our website. So this is our third party URL. This is Swagger documentation for the IRCTC API, where you can access all the tickets and where you can book the ticket also. So for these URLs, you need to develop a consumer. So this is our consumer application. We developed in the class, we developed the consumer by using REST template. I asked you people to develop the consumer by using web client. Okay, good. How to develop that by using web client? I have given the web client example. How to send a GET request by using web client. How to send synchronous request, asynchronous request. How to send the post request also by using web client. So could you please confirm? Are you able to complete that task? Could you please confirm? Are you able to complete that task? Is it working? Okay, good. So next one, here guys, yesterday I have given one task for you. Flux example. How many of you able to develop a REST API by using Flux as a response? Mono means single response. Flux means stream of responses. Are you guys able to implement that Flux concept, guys? Are you guys able to implement that Flux concept?
Yes, sir.
Is it working?
Yes, sir.
Can you show me the demo?
Sure, sir.
Your name?
Teja, sir. Guru Teja.
Guru Teja. Okay. Could you please share your screen? So I have given you a task where you need to develop the REST API, which will provide stream of responses. Yeah, I can see your screen.
Yes, sir. I have created one method.
First, where is the provider?
This is the provider one.
Okay, it is giving the direct stream of response. Can you access that provider in the browser?
Sure, sir. This is the endpoint. Just keep on giving the stream of responses.
Yeah, continuously that response will be coming. It's not a one-time response, guys. So can you send that URL in the chat box so people will experience that? Send that request, send that URL in the chat box, the Zoom chat. Okay, after the class, yes, you sent it. Guys, so there is a provider URL which will give you continuous response from the provider. So this is not a single response for you. It will giving you continuous responses. I have given the URL in the chat box. For every 1 second, you will get the response from the provider. For every 1 second, you will get the response from the provider. So we need to develop the consumer which is going to access that provider, which is a body to flux concept. Body to mono means whenever we send a request, directly we are going to get the response. But when you go for body to mono means a single response. Body to flux means continuously we are going to get the response from the provider. Okay. So can you guys see this one? What is the logic that he has implemented? Can you see this? What is the logic that he has implemented in order to catch the flux response? Okay, so web client dot create by passing the third party URL, he's creating a web client object. Okay, then next one, a client dot get method, he's calling to send a get request. Dot URI is passing the recent change, that URL pattern. So what is the method URL pattern is passing by using URI? Dot retrieve to read the data from the response body, and he want to map that response to the flux object. It's not body to mono, it is a body to flux concept. So string dot class, then take 10. For every 10 seconds, he's going to take the response from there. So flux object he got. Then stream response dot subscribe. Whatever the flux is available, he's subscribed to that flux and he is taking that response and he is printing that response on the console. Good. Teja, could you please execute that?
Sure.
show that output in the console.
This is the
Yes.
response we are getting from the
Response is coming continuously. Response is coming continuously. So for every 1 second, it will give the response and it is going to print that response on the console. Okay, guys.
Actually, I have taken only 10 records from the stream. After 10 records, it is not going to stream the response.
Yeah. So you are taking only 10 records from the stream.
Yeah.
That's fine. Good. Okay. Fine. Good job, Teja. Anyone else who tried this concept, guys? Anyone else who tried this concept? Implementing web client, which is going to access Flux as a response. So I have given the URL also in the chat box. So you can try to implement that Flux concept using that. Okay, cool. Next one. So guys, do you remember we implemented exception handling concept. We implemented exception handling concept in the Spring Web application. So anyone can quickly summarize that, what we learned as part of that exception handling? What we learned as part of exception handling?
Sir,
Yes.
you told to develop the provider with the WebFlux.
Correct.
Yeah, I tried like flux dot from array, like that I tried. Is that correct?
Yes, you can do that. Stream response you can send.
Shall I share my screen, sir?
Yeah. Your name?
Yamuna, sir.
Yeah. Share your screen.
Yes, I am sharing now. Yeah, is it visible, sir? Yeah, is it visible now?
Yeah, I'm able to see.
Yeah, in this provider with by using WebFlux, I tried like this. I did flux dot from array and I'm passing string arrays. Yeah, I'm returning that one. And in consumer, yes, I'm in the consumer. I'm getting that flux and I'm returning that one. Yeah, but for provider, how we can develop efficiently, sir, without like this? Is there any other way to develop? Yeah, can anyone hear me?
Yeah, able to hear you.
Yes.
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 Yamuna, I can hear you. So this is one way to do that. You are sending the hard-coded values as a flux. Instead of that, you can take the data from the database and you can send the data as a flux response also. And when you are sending that response, in that response also you can set the time interval. So I want to send the response for every 10 seconds. I want to send the response for every 15 seconds, like that. You can set the time interval also when you are sending the flux response to the client. Okay, you are sending a direct response. without setting any time interval. If you want to set the time interval also, we can do that. First send one value, first send the data, then wait for 10 seconds, then send the second data, then wait for 10 seconds, then send the third record, wait for 10 seconds, then send the fourth record. So like this, we can send the stream of values by setting some time interval also for the flux object. So multiple ways to send the data by using flux. So you are using one approach. There are other approaches also for that.
Sir, but from database means we should use MongoDB or any other
Any
DB.
database, not only Mongo, it can be MySQL, it can be Oracle, H2, any database you can use. Just you need to retrieve the records.
Okay. Okay, sir. Thank you.
Good. So guys, I'm giving one more day time. If anyone has not tried that, so please do some research and try to implement. If anybody has not done the research, try to implement the REST API, which is going to provide, try to implement the REST API, which is going to provide Flux as a response. And you need to develop the consumer in order to access that. Okay, next one. How we are going to handle?
Sir, I have one more doubt. Yeah, when I tried with MySQL DB, it's showing it cannot be converted to Flux like that.
You need to set the producers as an event stream. Whenever you are writing the method with the Flux response, you need to set the producers value like this, event stream value, media type event stream value like that. You need to set that.
Okay. Okay, sir.
So that's basically, we need to develop a reactive application. So I will explain what is reactive application, how to implement reactive applications. So I'm giving some time so that you guys can do some research on that before I'm going to explain.
Okay, sir.
All right. Good, guys. So we are able to understand how to develop the provider applications, and we are able to understand how to develop consumer applications. For the provider application, we used one annotation called @REST controller annotation. For the consumer development, we used REST template class. Okay, and we used web client interface, and we also used CN client for inter-service communication. Now in the interview, they may ask you a question, how to handle exceptions in REST API. How to handle exceptions in the REST API. Already in the WebMVC application, we are able to understand exception handling. Do you guys remember how we implemented exception handling in our Spring WebMVC module? What are the annotations we used, guys?
Yes, sir.
One annotation called
controller advice at
exception handler, and we used one
Controller
annotation called controller advice. Can you tell me what is the purpose of this exception handler annotation and what is the purpose of this controller advice annotation?
The controller advice for global exception.
Global exception handling, to handle exception using a method. So this is used to represent global exception handler. Global exception handler. So exception can occur in any method. Exception can occur in any class. So you can do that handling in two ways. One is class-based handling and another one is application-based handling. Which one is recommended, guys? Class-based handling is recommended or application-based handling is recommended? Application-based handling is recommended. So that's where controller advice. So this controller advice annotation we will use in the C2B applications. That means when you are developing a web application with the user interface. So whenever the problem occurred, if you want to send some UI page as a response, then we are going to use controller advice annotation. Okay, suppose you are developing a provider application. So let me open my provider application. So when you are developing a provider application, if you want to handle exceptions in the provider application, the exception handler class we are going to create with a REST controller advice. So instead of controller advice, we are going to use the annotation called REST controller advice. That is the only difference. Okay. This is also going to represent global exception handler. This global exception handler will be used in the B2B applications. So exception handler method is common to handle the exception based on the exception type. Okay. When you are developing a web application, then you will use controller advice for C2B. You are going to use controller advice for C2B, and when you are going to develop the REST API, we will use REST controller advice for B2B communication, C2B communication and B2B communication. Now see here, this is my REST API. I want to create one new package called exception package. Okay. Now here I will create one class with a name called app exception handler. App exception handler. So this class I want to use as a global exception handler. To use this as a global exception handler, we will use one annotation called @REST controller advice annotation. What is that annotation, guys? We are using one annotation called REST controller advice annotation we are going to use, which will represent this class as a global exception handler class. Now, so in this class, I want to write the methods to handle the exceptions. Public response entity. Public response entity. Any response that you want to send, some problem occurred, some string response I want to send, handle exception. What exception? Anything. Okay. For global exception, I want to write this method. Then we will specify exception handler value is equal to exception dot class. Exception dot class. So in our application, wherever exception occurred, that should be handled by our REST controller advice. So here you can write some logic for that, and find you can return new response entity of whatever the message you want to send, some problem. Okay. And HTTP status dot internal server error, which is 501. Okay. HTTP status, by using this we can send what is the status code that we want to send to the client. So HTTP status we can specify dot internal server error. So HTTP status dot HTTP status code dot this HTTP status object will come Spring Framework HTTP status dot internal server error, which is going to send 500 as a status code. So in the web application, we implemented controller advice. Controller advice method will return view page for the response. Whenever the problem occurs, one generic error page we are going to send as a response to the client. One generic error page we are going to send as a response to the client when you go for controller advice. But in the REST controllers, in the REST API, there is no concept of view pages. Everything is a direct response. So that's why in the REST controller advice class, we are going to write the method. That method will return response entity. So in our application, wherever exception occur, this REST controller advice will execute. This REST controller advice is going to execute, and it is going to send that error response to the client. Suppose if you want to send some custom object in the response, that also you can do. Okay, in the exception, we can create one more Java class called exception info Java class. We are creating exception info Java class, and we are taking private string exception code, private string exception description, private local date, exception date, on which date that exception occurred, that also we can specify. That also we can specify. Are you clear with my point?
Yes, sir.
Good. Now let us generate the setters and getters for this one. Generate getters and setters for this all three variables. So this is basically to send exception details to the consumer application. Whenever some exception occur in the provider application, we need to send those exception details to the consumer in the form of JSON. So that is the reason I have taken one exception info object. Now, so I can write one more method, public response entity of exception info. I'm going to send my custom object as a response to the client. Exception info handle exception, handle custom exception, or handle business exception. Handle business exception, which is our user defined exception. Okay, so ticket not found exception or something like this we are having. Let me create one user defined exception, new Java class. This is ticket not found exception. How to represent this as a user defined exception? By extending the properties. Extends the properties from runtime exception. Extend the properties from runtime exception. So I can write some super keyword constructor we can write for this. I'm creating one user defined exception, guys. Generate constructor. Okay, so zero define constructor. I'm specifying exception with the message, super message we are calling. Okay, this is user defined exception. So now handle no ticket found exception. Okay, so no ticket found exception I'm going to specify, which is ticket not found exception. Whenever this exception occurred, I want to create exception info object and I want to send that object as a response. New exception info. And for this one, I want to set info dot set exception code. In the industry, for every exception, one code will be assigned. Info dot set exception description. What is that? Exception dot get message will be available. And when that exception occurred, info dot set exception date. So when exception occurred, we can set local date dot now. So that will display the current date. Now this exception information I want to send as a response. Okay, so we are going to use return new response entity. New response entity. I want to pass this information and HTTP status dot some bad request. HTTP status dot bad request. It is a client mistake. There is no ticket available with the given ticket ID. So I'm sending the response as a bad request. So like this, you can create user defined exceptions in the application and you can handle those exceptions. When this method should be executed, exception handler value is equal to ticket not found exception dot class. So in our project, whenever ticket not found exception occurred, then this method should be executed and this method will send exception details to the client in the JSON format. So I have created one class with a name called ticket not found exception.java, ticket not found exception.java, and I created one more class with a name called exception info.java, and I created one more class app exception handler.java. Okay, so this is user defined exception I'm creating. How I am creating user defined exception? By extending the properties from runtime exception. Public class ticket not found exception extends the properties from runtime exception and I am writing a constructor for that. And the next, to send the exception details to the client. If there is a UI, then we can display a page. Some problem occurred, please try again later. In the web application, we will display error page to the client. But here, there is no UI. It is a pure backend REST API. So how we will send the error details to the consumer? So that's where exception info.java class is created. In this class, I am taking 3 variables, exception code. In the project, for every exception, one code will be assigned. For database exception 001, for SQL exception 002, for null pointer exception 003. So for custom exceptions is 004. Like this. For every exception, some code will be assigned. So I'm taking one information class to store the exception data, exception code, exception description, exception date. And I have taken one global exception handler class. So here generic exception is available, and here user defined exception handling also available. In our application, wherever ticket not found exception occurred, then this method is responsible to handle that. And what this method is sending as a response to the client? So it is creating exception information object, and it is sending that exception information in the response body. So whatever the exception occurred, that response information also will go to the client in the JSON format. Okay, now, so let me go to the controller. Let me demonstrate on this method. Ticket REST controller is available. Book ticket is available, and get tickets method is available. Get ticket method is also available based on the given email ID, path variable. Okay, now let me write one more method which is going to get the ticket by ticket ID. Okay, so get ticket by ID. Path variable ID I am taking. Okay, so ID I am specifying, and here also ID I am specifying. Get ticket by ID. This is the URL pattern. Get ticket with ID, and I am taking the ID as a input. Okay, so now simply I will write this. Simply I will write this method. So simply I will write that if ID is equal to 100, then throw new no ticket not found exception. Ticket not found exception. I will say invalid ID. I will say that if ID is equal to 100, then I want to throw invalid ID. Now else I want to call the method called get tickets method, or whatever is available, we can call that method. Okay, so with this I'm going to call this method, and I'm going to return this response. If the ID is not equal to 100, I will return all the tickets and I will return them. Okay, simple. Get tickets with ID, without ID. If you give ID is equal to 100, it will throw the exception. If you don't give ID as 100, it will retrieve all the tickets which are available and it will return for you. Just to understand, ticket not found exception is working as expected or not. If you see, these are the classes I have created in the provider in order to handle custom exception. Are you guys clear with my point? Ticket not found exception.java, which is user defined exception class. Exception info.java is available, which is used to map the exception information in the object format. And app exception handler is available, which is used to handle global exceptions in the application. In our REST controller, I made a small change to show you how exception handling is working in the REST API. Throw new ticket not found exception. If you give ID as 100, then it will throw ticket not found exception, invalid ID. When ticket not found exception occurred, then it will go to app exception handler, which is REST controller advice. Let me represent this as a component also as a Spring Bean. Okay, now let me run this application and let us see the exception handling is working as expected or not. And let me see the exception handling is working as expected or not. Application started. Yes, application started, guys. Now let me go to Postman. Let me check what will happen if we pass the ticket ID as 100. It will throw user defined exception. When user defined exception occurred, what is the behavior of our REST API? Let us try to understand that. Let us try to understand what is the behavior of the REST API when we don't pass that ID. Localhost colon get request I want to send my URL pattern get ticket ID I am trying to pass as a path parameter. If I pass 101, then it should give me all the tickets which are available. What is the port number? Okay, port number is 8084 I have given. Get ticket with 101. When I give the ticket ID as 101, it should retrieve all the records available in the table and it should display those records. Currently, in my local database, no records available, so it is giving empty array. I'm not getting any exception. I'm getting 200, okay. Suppose if I give this as a 100, now see the response, I'm giving 100. So what happened, guys? We are getting the response with the bad request. This is exception code. This is exception description. This is the exception date. So we are able to handle user defined exceptions also in the REST API. Already we know this concept. Earlier in the WebMVC we implemented controller advice to handle the global exceptions. In the REST API we are using REST controller advice to implement exception handling in the REST API. So when I send a GET request to this REST controller, when I send GET request to this REST controller with the ID as 100, if ID is 100, it will throw ticket not found exception. What is this ticket not found exception? Ticket not found exception is a user defined exception. How I created user defined exception? By extending the properties from runtime exception. And to send the exception data to the client, I created a class called exception info class. I created a class called exception info class. What is the purpose of this exception info? To send the exception data to the client in the JSON format. To send exception data to the client in the JSON format, we created exception info. Then here main exception handler method is available, which is used to handle the exception. Whenever you send a request with the ticket not found, whenever the exception occurred, this handler method will execute. In this handler method, we created exception info object and we are sending that info object in the response. We are sending that info object in the response. Are you able to understand what is REST controller advice and how we will send exception details to the client application? When a client sends a request with the invalid data, so we are sending the status code as a bad request. So and we are sending the exception data in the JSON format saying that it is invalid ID. Exception code, exception description, exception date, when that exception occurred, that information also we are sending. Are you guys clear? Are you guys able to understand how we will handle global exceptions in the REST API?
Hello.
Hello?
Yes, sir. Sir, I'm having one question.
Yes.
So, sir, like in our project, means we do not know like what kind of error will occur, right? So most of the time, like it will execute the first method, which we have created for the exception, right? And in that case, we are sending the HTTP status as a like internal server error, right?
So listen. When you are writing the exceptions, when you are writing the logic, you will create the custom exceptions. In the try catch block, you will throw the user defined exception. Whenever the user defined exception occurred, it will go to the handler method. Suppose if you don't know what exception is going to occur, then it will comes under generic exception. Then the first method will be executed. In the first method also, you can send the information in the form of object like this. Instead of sending the string value, you can send the exception code something like this 002, whatever the exception is available, e.get message, and you can pass the exception information object internal server error. Whenever the generic exception occurs, why that exception occur? We are sending to the customer in the JSON format to the client application. If a user defined exception occur, that user defined exception we will throw like this. So in this way, you can handle any type of exception in the application globally by using this REST controller advice concept.
Yeah. So in the first case, we are sending the internal server error, but there may be chance the error belong to client side only, right? So in that case, the whatever we are sending like internal server error for
Sir,
all
if
the
that is
exception.
when this method will be executed?
When any exception will occur apart from the ticket not found. Yeah.
Any exception. Any exception means it is a code issue only, right? So code issue means that is our problem, internal server problem. If a client is sending invalid ticket ID, then ticket not found exception. If a client is not sending the mandatory data, then that is a client problem. But exception means if there is some problem in the code, it can be database issue, it can be null pointer, it can be typecasting, or it can be anything. It is a code problem. When it is a code problem, it is a server side problem. That's why I'm giving internal server error 500.
Okay, sir. Good.
Yeah. All right. Are you able to understand how to handle exceptions in the REST API also? In the web application, we have seen this, and in the REST API also, we are able to handle exceptions globally by using REST controller advice. Now, can you tell me what is the difference between controller advice and REST controller advice, guys? What is the difference between controller advice and REST controller advice?
So controller annotation only use particular class, but we can REST controller advice anywhere
No.
exception occur.
No. What is the difference between
C2
controller advice and REST controller advice?
Controller advice can be used to handle exception
Controller
in
D2B, I think, and REST controller advice C2B.
Controller advice you can use only
So when you want to send some UI page as a response, whenever exception occurred, whenever exception occurred, when you want to send some UI page as a response, then we are going to use controller advice for that. Okay. So whenever exception occurred, when you want to send some UI page as a response, then we will use controller advice. So what is REST controller advice? Whenever exception occurred, I want to send some error response to the client. Then direct response I want to send to the client.
Yes.
Then we will go for REST controller advice. All good?
So I think REST
Fine.
controller can use only microservices and REST services.
Sorry?
REST controller advisor can use only REST services, sir.
Yes, sir. When the REST APIs in the microservices, we are going to use only REST controller advice. If your application is a monolithic application which contains UI, then you will use controller advice.
Controller advice.
Okay, good.
Okay.
Next one, another important concept. So the question is, as of now, we are developing the REST API by using REST controller concept. Guys, observe carefully. Observe carefully. You are going to get shocked by listening to this concept. So that is, here, as of now, we created one REST provider, one provider application we created. So what we have done in this provider application, we created entity class and we created repository interface. I created entity class and I created repository interface, and I have created service. I have created service with a business logic. Then I have created REST controller with the HTTP methods.
Yes.
REST controller with the HTTP methods. So this is our REST API. This is how we developed our REST API as of now. This is how we developed our REST API as of now. So there is a entity available. If you see this application, service is available, service IMPL is available. So here we are having entity class available, mappings available, and for that entity, there is a repository also available. So lot of code we have implemented, ticket service IMPL, book ticket, get tickets, lot of code we have created, and repositories we have created, and REST controller we created, lot of logic, almost 200-300 lines of code we created to develop our REST API. 200-300 lines of code we developed to make our IRCTC REST API. So entity class available, repository interface is available, service class available which contains the business logic, REST controller is available with the HTTP methods. Now, so total if you see, ticket REST controller around 70 lines of code available, service IMPL around 30 lines of code available, 100 lines of code available. Okay, now entity is available, repository available, 100 lines of code we are writing to perform CRUD operations, creating a ticket, and just to create the ticket and get the ticket. Create the ticket and get the ticket, we are writing 100 lines of code. So we developed one REST API. In this REST API, what is available? So we have a method to book the ticket. We have a method to get the ticket by email ID. We have a method to get the ticket with ID. We have a method to get all the tickets. Just for these three operations, book ticket, get tickets. How many lines of code we created in the REST controller and in the service layer? Average 90 to 100 lines of code we have written. Suppose I have a requirement, create product, update product, get product by ID, and get all products, delete product by ID, then delete all products. So I want to implement one REST API to perform these operations. I should be able to create a product record, that means insert product, I should be able to insert one product. I should be able to update the product. I should be able to get the product by using its ID. I should be able to get all the products. I should be able to delete the product by ID, and I should be able to delete all the products also. Now, can you tell me how many lines of code we need to write to achieve this requirement? Can you tell me how many lines of code we need to write in order to achieve this requirement? How many lines of code we need to write to achieve this requirement? Come on, guys.
16 to 20.
How many lines of code we need to write in order to achieve this requirement?
Nearly 1,000.
1,000. No?
4 to 500.
No, 200.
So minimum to minimum 200 lines of code we need to write, right?
Yes, sir.
Insert the record, update the record, get the record by using its ID, get all the records, delete the record by using its ID, delete all the records from the table. So we need to write minimum 100 to 200, 100 to 150, 150 lines of code we need to write in order to develop one REST API with these functionalities. Create a REST controller method, then create a service method. Create REST controller method and create a service method. So by using this, we want to perform CRUD operations. We want to perform CRUD operations. Insert the product, update the product, get all the products, delete the product, and delete all products. So these are the several functionalities that I want to implement. So as of now, we are developing the REST API by using a annotation called REST controller. Okay, so this is for product, guys. This is for product. So similarly, in my application, I want to deal with the products and I want to deal with the books also. Then insert book, update book, get all books, then delete book, then delete all books. So I want to develop this functionality also. Now along with this, I am having employees in my application. So insert one employee, okay, then update the employee, get employee by ID, get all employees, delete employee by ID, delete all employees. So these are the functionalities I want to develop in my application. So in my project, I should deal with the product functionality, I should deal with the book functionality, I should deal with the employee functionality. So now, how many lines of code we need to write to perform these operations by using REST API? How many lines of code we need to write to perform the operations by using REST API? How many lines of code we need to write to perform operations using REST API?
500.
500 lines of code we need to write to perform the operations by using REST API. But if you observe, is there any common thing among these three functionalities? Product REST controller, book REST controller, employee REST controller. Is there any common thing available among these three functionalities, guys?
Yes, sir. Same
Prod operations are same.
Is there any common thing available among these three functionalities? Yes, we are performing CRUD operations only. So in the book table, I want to perform the CRUD operations. In the product table, I want to perform the CRUD operations. In the employee table, I want to perform the CRUD operations. In the product table, I want to perform the CRUD operations. In the book table, I want to perform the CRUD operations. In the employee table also, I want to perform the CRUD operations. Similarly, if I have 10 tables like this,
Yes, yes. 10 products.
same logic we need to write, right?
boilerplate.
Same problem, same code we need to write, right? Right, boilerplate code. Boilerplate code. So is it recommended or it is not recommended?
Not recommended.
Is it recommended or it is not recommended?
Not recommended.
Not recommended. Why?
Common logic is
Performance
really-
decreases.
Same code we are writing many times.
Sorry?
See, common code we are writing many times.
Yes, same common code we are going to write many times in the REST API, which is not recommended. Which is not recommended. So to overcome this problem, there is a concept called Spring Data REST concept is available in the market. What is the concept, guys? Spring Data REST concept is available in the market. Sir, what is this Spring Data REST concept? We can develop REST API without using REST controller. We can develop using Spring Data REST. Using Spring Data REST concept, we can develop REST API without using REST controller and controller annotations. You no need to create controller classes or REST controller classes. So if you go for Spring Data REST concept, you no need to use REST controller and you no need to use controller annotations here. So Spring Data REST is used to develop the REST APIs without using these annotations. That means if you use Spring Data REST concept, then you no need to write a REST controller. This REST controller we can completely delete it. You no need to develop the REST controller if you use a concept called Spring Data REST concept. Sir, in which scenario we will go for Spring Data REST concept? In which scenario we will go for Spring Data REST concept? If your REST API is only responsible to perform CRUD operations in the table, there is no business logic available for the REST API. Just I want to perform the CRUD operations by using REST API, then we can use Spring Data REST concept without writing any logic, without writing single line of code. You can perform CRUD operations by using Spring Data REST concept. So in which scenario we need to go for this Spring Data REST? If you want to develop a REST API only to perform the CRUD operations, there is no business logic, no need of any validation, no need of any business logic, nothing. Just insert, update, delete, retrieve. If your REST API is only responsible to perform CRUD operations, suppose book REST controller, employee REST controller, product REST controller, I want to perform some CRUD operations, only CRUD operations, there is nothing else. I want to perform only CRUD operations. When you want to perform only CRUD operations, then you no need to create your own REST controller to develop the logic, because the CRUD operations are common for everyone in the project. So that's why Spring Data REST module is available, which will simplify CRUD operations in the application. Okay, how to achieve this? For example, this is my REST API. So here I am having binding class available, book class is available, book REST controller is available. Okay, now let me take one more class called employee. New Java class. I'm taking this class as employee. I want to represent this employee as an entity. Okay, employee entity. Now I'm taking private integer employee ID I want to represent this as a primary key and I want to specify generated value strategy. Generated value generator is equal to identity generator. Generator strategy. Generated value. What is the strategy? So I'm going to use the strategy as identity. Employee ID is available and private string employee name is available and private double employee salary is available. Let me generate setters and getters for these variables. Okay, setters and getters for these variables. I have taken one entity class. So to perform the operations in the table, we need a interface. Okay, let me create one interface which is employee repo. How to represent this as an interface which is going to extend the properties from JPA repository. What is the entity? My entity is employee. My primary key is integer. So what is the purpose of entity and repository, guys? Can you tell me? What is the purpose of entity and repository? What is the purpose of entity, guys?
Data inside the database.
Perform code operations. We need repositories.
Yeah, to perform the CRUD operation.
Entity is used to perform the CRUD operations. Entity is used to perform the CRUD operations.
Or if the entity class name and the table class name table name is different, then it is creating more columns when we run this application, sir. In the
Then you can write @ table. You can map your class name to the table name.
yeah, even that time also it is creating new columns. It is altering the table and adding new columns to the existing table, sir.
Sir, if your variable names are changed, then it will create a new column. It will alter that. Now, if I run this now, with this employee name, it will create a table. In the table, it will take the 3 columns for me: ID, name, and salary. Okay, if you make any changes to your entity class, then only it will alter. If you don't make any changes to the entity, why it will alter your table? You got my point?
Yeah, I got it. But I tried it. It is actually adding new columns to the existing table. Though I mentioned that table name, which is mapping to the table which is defined in my Oracle database, sir.
So maybe you're changing the structure of the entity. That is the reason.
Okay.
Yeah. So this is my employee entity class, and I'm taking a ID, name, and a salary. And I created one repository. So now I want to perform CRUD operations in the employee entity, guys. First, let me run this application and let me show you my database. So where is the database available? It is a H2 database, guys. Why I am using H2? What is the advantage with the H2, guys?
It provides
What is the advantage with the H2?
it provides
database.
H2 is a in-memory database. H2 is a in-memory database. So you no need to set up the database. You no need to download and install the databases. So ready-made database will be available for our application. So let me go here, localhost : 8084/h2 console.
80 wrong, sir.
8084 h2 console. Okay, password I have given something. Connect. Now I connected. Employee table is created. Do I have any data in the employee table, guys? Do I have any data in the employee table now? Come on. So just I created my employee entity. So entity means one table will be created, and I created one repository extending from the JPA repository. Now I want to insert the record into this table through this application. So do I have any REST controller for that? Do I have any employee REST controller? Do I have any employee service in this application, or it is not available? I just created employee entity and employee repository. So do I have any REST controller to deal with the employee data? do I have any REST controller to deal with the employee data, or I don't have any REST controller to deal with the employee data?
We don't have any.
No control.
No REST controller is available. Now I want to perform the CRUD operations. So that's where Spring Data REST concept comes into picture. So when you want to perform CRUD operations on the table using REST API, you no need to develop a REST controller separately. Okay. Now what I will do is, in this repository only, I'm going to add one annotation which is called repository, repository REST resource. What is that annotation, guys? I'm going to use one annotation which is called repository REST resource annotation. But the suggestion is not coming repository REST resource annotation. If I want to use, then I need to add a Maven dependency. That Maven dependency is Spring Data REST dependency we need to add. What is the dependency I need to add, guys? Spring Data REST dependency I need to add. Currently, that Spring Data REST dependency not available in our application. Go to pom.xml. Go to pom.xml. I want to add the dependency which is Spring Data REST dependency. How we will find out that? mvnrepository.com. There is a website, and you go here, Spring Data REST. Spring Boot Starter Data REST dependency I am taking. Okay. When you add this dependency in the pom.xml, then you no need to develop the REST controller to perform the CRUD operations. You no need to develop the REST controllers to perform the CRUD operations. Now let me stop it. I added a new dependency, Spring Boot Starter Data REST dependency. Let me reload my Maven project. I'm reloading my Maven project so that it will download the new dependency. So why I am using this data REST dependency? I want to perform the CRUD operations with the employee data without creating the REST controller. Then you can go for repository REST resource concept. You can go for repository REST resource concept. It is downloading Maven dependencies, repository resource. Okay, I think the dependency getting downloaded now. We are good. Repository REST resource annotation. Now I have taken this annotation. So for this one, I'm going to specify path. What is the path I want to specify? Path I will specify EMPs. That's it. So with this, our REST API is ready to perform the CRUD operations with the employee table. So I'm not creating any REST controller. If your requirement is only to perform the CRUD operations, then you can go for repository REST resource concept. Now let me run the application and let me show you repository REST resource. So we are exposing our repository interface as a REST API. That's it. By using Spring Data REST concept, we are exposing our repository as a REST resource. So that this repository will work. This interface is working as REST controller as well as JPA repository. That is the meaning of repository REST resource. Repository REST resource means it is going to expose our repository as a REST controller. That's it. Earlier, we created separate REST controller. So if you have a business logic, if you want to perform some business operations, then you need to create your own REST controller. But if you want to perform only CRUD operations, then it is not required. Now my application started. Clear the console. Go to the H2 database. Connect back to the H2. ABC@123. Connect. Now employee available. Run this. Any record available in the employee table, guys? No. Go to the postman. 8084 employees. Send a post request. With the body raw data. I will send that data in the JSON format. ID is a primary key. Only employee name I want to send. Employee name Ashok, comma, employee salary. Employee salary. I'm sending something like 10,000. I'm not sending ID. Why? Because in my entity, employee ID is already a primary key. Generator is available. Only name and salary I'm sending from the postman. So I'm sending a request 8084/EMPs. But observe, do I have any REST controller for employee in our application? REST controller is not available for employee, guys. In our project, REST controller is available for the employee. The REST control is not available for the employee. Not available. Only employee repository is available. What is this? Is it a normal repository or is it a REST repository? Guys,
Sir, what is
it a
that path,
normal?
sir? Can you explain about the path here, EMPS?
That is the URL pattern. So do we
Oh,
have
okay.
a REST controller or do we have REST repository now?
REST repository now.
We have REST repository. So what is the meaning of REST repository?
To expose our class as a REST controller.
Yes, REST repository, nothing but it is equal to REST controller plus repository. Whatever the repository available, that repository we are exposing as a REST controller. You no need to develop a separate REST controller when you go for REST repository concept. Now, path is equal to EMPs. That means this is the URL pattern to perform the CRUD operations. So I want to send a HTTP request. To which URL I want to send the HTTP request? EMPs. Now I am sending post request to the EMPs with the employee data in the request body. Click on send. Send the request. Now, what happened, guys? What is the status code I am getting? What is the status code I am getting?
It's
Created.
201 created.
201 created. 201 created. Now go to database, run this query. Can you see record is inserted in the table or not?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Did I create a REST controller?
No,
Is
sir.
there a REST controller?
No, sir. We have used
Is there any
annotations.
REST controller available to handle this post request, or the REST controller is not available to handle the post request?
Not available.
REST controller is not available to handle the post controller. So then what is the purpose of the REST repository now? Why we are using the REST repository now? What is the purpose of REST repository?
To perform code operations, we need to use the REST repository.
Directly we can send the HTTP request to the repository if it is a REST repository. When to create the REST controller? When to go for the REST controller concept? When to go for REST repository concept? Guys, come on. When to go for the REST controller concept? When to go for REST repository concept?
If there is no business logic, then we can directly use the repository as.
If you want to develop REST API with your business logic, is there some payment you want to perform, payment amount you want to deduct, some email you want to send, some report you want to generate? You need to read the data from one table, you need to insert into another table, you need to read the data from the file, you want to send a OTP to the WhatsApp, you want to send the email to the customer, then you need to create your own REST controller. Suppose if your requirement is only to perform CUD operations, then REST controller not required. Whatever the REST repository concept is there, we can use it. Directly with our JPA repository, you can perform the CRUD operations. Now, let me insert one more record also. Ashok is inserted. Now, let me insert John. For the John, I am giving 15,000 salary. Send. Now, I am getting the status code as 201. What is the meaning of 201? Record is created. Now, go to the database, run. Now, can you see? John is also inserted. It is a H2 database. You can use MySQL, you can use Oracle, you can use Postgres, MongoDB, whatever you want, you can integrate. Database can be anything. So the thing is, we are able to perform CRUD operations with the database by using REST repository concept. There is no REST controller. I'm not creating any REST controller. I'm not creating any service class to perform the operations. Now see, if you want to implement this requirement with REST controller, How many lines of code you need to write? Minimum 200 to 300 lines of code you need to write, right?
Yes,
Yes.
sir. Exactly.
Now, if I use REST repository for this one, do I need to write
Just-
anything?
Just
Zero.
59.
Single annotation.
If you want to develop this requirement, perform CRUD operations on the product table, perform the CRUD operations on the book table, perform the CRUD operations on the employee table. If you want to implement this requirement by using REST controller, 200 to 300 lines of code you need to write. It may take 2 hours to 3 hours of time to develop that REST API. So same requirement, if I implement by using Spring Data REST concept, how much time? Do I need to write anything? Just one annotation. What is that annotation, guys? Just I need to use one annotation. What is that annotation I need to
At
use?
the rate of repository REST
Repository
resource.
REST service.
What is the annotation I need to use?
Repository REST
At the
service.
rate repository restrictions.
I need to use only one annotation, that is at the rate repository REST resource. I need to use at the rate repository REST resource.
How it identifies whether it is cached insert or delete, update, those things.
Sorry, sir.
How this particular interface identifies the request is for add or delete or update.
This is the request type. Post means create. Get means retrieve. Put means update. Delete
Okay,
means delete.
okay.
HTTP methods based on that it will understand.
Sir,
Got
if
it.
you
Now,
want to get based on ID, sir, suppose get
now you
request.
see here. Send a get request. Click on get request. Now see what is happening. When I send the get request, what is happening, guys? What is the status code we are getting? What is the status code we are getting for
200.
the get request?
200.
200. We are getting the status code as a 200. Okay, we are able to retrieve the records. Am I writing any logic to retrieve the records, or automatically it is retrieving the records?
Automatically.
Now you pass /employees/1. If I pass employees/1, which record it is giving me?
Only assure. Yes, sir.
First record is giving me based on the ID. If I pass to 2, then it is giving me second record. If I don't pass ID, then what it is doing? If I don't pass ID, then what it is
all
doing?
the records. All the records.
So like this, you can perform update, you can perform delete, all the CRUD operations you can perform by using repository resource concept. REST repository resource concept is available. So you just need to create one entity class and map that entity class with the database table, map that entity class with the database table, and create a repository interface, for that repository we are going to use repository REST resource annotation. So what is the benefit we are getting if I use this annotation, guys? Repository REST resource annotation. What is the advantage we are getting? What is the advantage we are getting with the repository REST resource concept?
We do not need to write controller and service class.
We no need to write the controller and service. It will expose our repository as a REST API. So in which scenario we will go for? Can we develop every provider with the same concept so that very quickly our logic will be completed?
Only code operations.
If your requirement is to perform only CRUD operations, then you can do this. Okay. So Spring Data REST. In the Spring Boot, we can develop REST APIs in 2 ways. In Spring Boot, we can develop REST API in 2 ways. One is by using REST controller concept. Another one is by using REST repository concept.
Sir, if you give like a 103 or something,
Guys, now
it goes to our exception.
We can develop REST API in 2 ways, guys. So when you are using Spring Boot, we can develop the REST API in 2 ways. What are the 2 ways to develop that REST API? What are the 2 ways to develop the REST API?
REST controller and REST repository.
One is by using REST controller, another one is by using repository REST resource. Repository REST resource. So when to go for REST controller and when to go for REST repository concept? When to go for REST controller and when to go for REST repository concept?
We want to write a simple CRUD operations, then we can go for data rest.
If you want to perform simple only CRUD operations, insert, update, delete, retrieve, then you can go for repository REST resource concept. If you want to implement some business logic in the REST API, then we need to go for REST controller concept.
Sir, is it possible to go for the combination of both?
Yes, in the same, now in our project both available, right? So if you see ticket REST controller is available with the REST controller and employee related functionality is available with the repository resource concept. Both can
No,
be
sir,
available in this.
for the same
Yes.
same entity.
For same entity, yeah, we can do both. You can create your own REST controller also and you can use REST repository also, but URL pattern should be different.
Will it handle the exceptions also, sir? Without.
If exception occurs, then global exception handler is already available. No?
Okay, sir.
So guys, you understand what is the Spring Data REST concept and why we are going to use this Spring Data REST concept?
Yes, sir.
What is the purpose of Spring Data REST concept?
So are we going to use this REST concept in real time?
Yes. If
To
we want
reduce
to implement REST API with below functionalities, then we have to write lot of logic. Okay. We can implement that. Simply we can implement above requirements using REST Spring Data REST concept. Spring Data REST concept. So what is that Spring Data REST? Repository REST resource available. If you write logic like this, your REST API is ready to perform the CRUD operations. That's it. How beautiful it is, guys. For database operations, 0 lines of code. For the REST API, 0 lines of code. Your REST API is ready with this one annotation, which is called repository REST resource annotation. This annotation is equal to 200 lines of code that we have to write. 200 lines of code they reduced by giving one simple annotation, which is called repository REST resource annotation. Are you able to understand my point?
So it supports both JSON and XML, right?
No, sir, only JSON, sir.
Okay.
Only JSON.
So in background, so many implementation is there, sir.
Sorry?
In background, so many implementation is there for this data REST.
Yeah, so much implementation is there, that is abstraction for you. You can't see that implementation, this is abstraction for you. The only thing that you need to do, you need to add this dependency in the pom.xml, Spring Data REST. Okay, to work with the Spring Data REST concept, we need to add below dependency. To work with the Spring Data REST concept, we need to use below dependency. What is that? Spring Data REST dependency we are adding in the pom.xml. Once we add that Spring Data REST dependency, then we can create one interface like this. So this interface will support for both database operations plus API methods also. You no need to create your own REST controller when you are going for Spring Data REST concept.
Sir, if we integrate the Swagger also, So in
Yes.
Swagger, all
Yes.
the endpoint are visible, yeah, only one endpoint.
Swagger will provide the details of this one. No?
Okay, so all the endpoint would be available, like.
Right. You can check that once.
Okay.
All right. So I want you people to do the practice of this Spring Data REST concept. And today we implemented two concepts. We learned two concepts here: exception handling in the REST API, and we also understood what is Spring Data REST concept. These two are important concepts, guys. How to handle exceptions in the REST API and how to work with REST repositories in the Spring Boot. So please practice these two things. I will update the material by afternoon and we'll meet again in the tomorrow session. Is that okay, guys? Fine. Thank you. With this, I'm stopping for today.
Sir, what is the difference between bad request and resource not found? Both are.
Sorry?
Bad request, we are sending like a bad request, sir, if the ID is not found. And the resource not found exception also we can send it, sir. Not found exception.
Resource not found, bad. Anything is fine, sir. Status code you can customize according to your requirement.
Okay, sir.
Okay.
And timeout. Okay, sir. If you call like another service, timeout exception is also one of the class, sir. Like if you call like another any REST API, if this timeout is there, then it throws like some timeout exception like that, sir.
Timeout exceptions, yes, we can set that.
Okay, okay.
Sir, how many concepts we should have a knowledge on this, like so far to face the real-time situations, please?
All these are important.
Sir?
All these are important.
Yeah, other than this, how much more is there, sir?
How much more is there? Concepts, another. So once you practice all these things, now I will explain how to implement relationships with the REST API. One-to-many, one-to-one and all. Once it is done, then only tools will be pending. Kafka, Redis, JUnit, Docker, etc. Another 10 days, we will finish it.
We'll also have Spring Batch, right?
Yes, sir. Spring Security, Spring Batch. That Spring Batch is one-day topic.
Okay.
So if we are perfect in all these, can we face the real-time situation, any situation until like?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.